3, 2, 1, end of test. King with a go.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another edition of Warbird Wednesday. My name is Fred Bell. I am the Vice Chairman of the Palm Springs Air Museum, and today we are headed down the road towards the end of reconnaissance aircraft with the big kahuna, the SR-71, the Blackbird, affectionately known by a lot of different names, but it is really an aircraft of legend. It's inspired people. If you look at comic books, there's SR-71s in there. The X-Men actually operated one. I mean, they were all over the place. But I also have to ask you a question, my Zaftig assistant, and that is, did you like the intro? Kevin and Jason, they're here today. We have a new intro, and we have to thank the Melbourne Ska Orchestra that licensed us the music for that and allowed us to use that. They love airplanes. We asked them, hey, we really like your song here. Can we use it? And they said, of course. So we want to thank Nikki over there at the Melbourne Ska Orchestra. Now, the interesting thing is there's a couple of folks off camera. I'm looking at them over here. We actually had two Australians from Melbourne wander in while we're shooting this video. So what are the chances of that, okay? But we're going to get through this, and I'm not going to laugh. And we're going to toss this off camera to Kevin. Kevin, good catch by the Kevin. Now, the SR-71 is a thing of legend, and it's a thing of legend for a lot of reasons. It was a Kelly Johnson design. Everybody loves Kelly Johnson, right? He is in aircraft design and at Lockheed, he is the guy. There is just nobody besides him. He's a pillar. We stand on the shoulders of giants. He's one of them. The first flight on this was in 1964 by Bob Gilliland. I want to give a shout out to Bob. I met him. He's been at the museum. Rob, his son, sits on our board, which is really exciting. And he's been to the museum many times, a wonderful man. I believe he flew every one of the SR-71s from there when they came out of Lockheed on their acceptance flight to the Air Force. The aircraft was introduced in 1966. The aircraft was retired in 1998 that we know of, and that was in the U.S. Air Force. It was retired, and then NASA retired it in 1999. Now, a Fred fun fact, Kevin, and this is a Fred fun fact. The museum, our museum, was offered an SR-71 at the time, and we turned it down because at that time we were primarily a World War II airplane museum, and we weren't really looking at this kind of stuff. I don't know where they would have put it anyways. It was a big airplane, but who knew, right? So the airplane, there were 32 of them built, and there were 12 lost to accidents. Now, there's been a whole bunch done on this airplane, and there's probably a whole bunch of you in the audience that know a lot more about it than I do and can tell me stories. So we're going to do a top-level overview today. But the aircraft could reach Mach 3. It was a derivative of the A-12. The A-12 was more of an offensive aircraft, and the SR-71 was more of a reconnaissance airplane. Now, as I understand it, and you can argue with me on this, is the A-12 flew truly covert missions, and those were the ones where if you got shot down, we deny, if you saw Mission Impossible, we deny all knowledge of your existence. And the SR-71 was more of an overt reconnaissance aircraft. You can argue with me in the comments, but that's where I understand it, how it kind of broke out between the two airplanes, the two designs. The SR-71 still holds a record from 1976 that we know of. I'm going to do a lot of that here because I'm sure there are things flying that we don't know about. But in 1976, it set the record as the fastest air-breathing aircraft in the world, and it still holds that record that we know of. Okay, so we're going along. Now, this is a great project name. The project that this came out of was a CIA Air Force program called Archangel. Is that like the perfect covert mission name? Project Archangel. So it came out of Project Archangel in around 1957. In 1959, they screwed around with it a bit, and then they came up with a requirement that, it has incredibly low radar cross-section, much like the F-117 behind me. And that was because of a program requirement in 1959 that said that they wanted a 90% reduction in the radar cross-section of the airplane. Now, the A-12 flew at Groom Lake in 1962. There were 13 built. Now, the program, this was a shock to me, the entire program was canceled in 1966 by McNamara. I'll get to that in a second, but I want to talk about the crews. Now, the crews on this aircraft, on the SR-71, this was, just like the F-117 behind me, the tip of the spear on our nation's secrets. If you were flying this aircraft, you were the creme de la creme of pilots. You were the best. And you were entrusted with our nation's secrets. Not only were you entrusted with our nation's secrets, but they also had to think you were fairly tough, because there was always a chance that you could get shot down in one of these. Hopefully it didn't happen, but there could be a chance. And so not only did you have to be at the top of your game when you're flying one of these in terms of being a pilot, but you have to be trusted by the leadership of the reconnaissance group and the CIA if you were flying a covert mission, that if somebody got a hold of you, you were going to do the unthinkable, and that was, they carried cyanide, and they were prepared. They would go meet their maker if they had to. So this was a scary mission. Now, a salute to you. There were a finite number of people who flew this airplane. This is a serious thing for me in that the salute today means a whole bunch. I mean, you were at the tip of the spear. And if you're an SR-71 pilot, if you were a crew person, if you were involved with the program, if you were at Lockheed, you were involved in one of the most amazing aerospace programs ever built, ever designed, ever thought of. And to this day, you have reached pinnacles in aviation history that few of us will ever reach. And so I want to salute you with root beer Racinette. This is a money bag root beer. Now, the nice thing about this is the one last week that Greg pulled out of and served me actually had schmutz, and I will use that as a technical term, that it looked like it had been bottled and shipped over on a freighter from India, and it was bottled in India, and it was just nasty. Now this has a head on it, so that's a good thing. It's got some carbonation. But to anybody, the pilots, everybody involved in this program, you were beyond reproach, on top of your game. Not only do I salute you, but the entire nation. You know what, Kevin? You're slipping, because this is actually drinkable and it's cold. So what you need to do is go more to the Greg Kenny school. He's laughing, but the Greg Kenny school will, leave it in the sun for 3 days and, throw it against a wall and then give it to me. But take one more. We salute you. So there's not a ton that, like I said, this airplane has been covered backwards, forwards, sideways. The interesting thing about it is 85% of this aircraft was titanium. So they spared no, and titanium at that time, it was used on aircraft, but not to the extent it was used on this one. the panels on the airplane, when the airplane was on the ground, you got to remember, going through the air, there's friction. The panels on the aircraft would be loose fitting on the ground. It would leak fuel, but when it got up to altitude and it got to speed, everything tightened up. Now think about that for a second. They thought about thermal expansion as the airplane was flying, and they designed the panels to the point where they actually all came together in flight. That's in a moving aircraft. So think about how hard that was. It had a specially designed fuel. It would only run on specially designed fuel. As I said, it still holds the record as the fastest air-breathing aircraft. Now, the other thing, a little Fred fun fact, was they almost called it the B-71. And why was that? That was because the XB-70. So the XB-70 was another fast airplane, but it was a bomber. They kicked it around, calling it the B-71, and then they changed it to the SR-71. And there was actually, and you can look this up, I might have spent a lot of time on it, but Lyndon Johnson actually pronounced it wrong in a speech, and that was because they couldn't get the RS and the SR, they hadn't sorted out what they were going to do with it yet. So he actually read it right, and everybody thought that he mislabeled the airplane. So good old Lyndon Johnson in a speech did that. Now, the aircraft has gone on into history. If you have an SR-71 laying around and you don't want it, the museum will gladly take it this time. I saw this video with this guy who restores airplanes, said he was going to shop for an SR-71. It turned out he bought a little tiny one in the store. So it was, if you have a big one, we'll go with it. The other thing that was interesting about it was it had to refuel from special KC-135Q tankers that had specially designed high-speed booms, because the SR-71, the refueling boom, because the thing could only go so slow. So basically, the KC-135 would put the pedal to the metal. That's an aviation term, a technical term. And they had a specially designed boom that could refuel the SR-71 that wouldn't have high-speed flutter, because sometimes as you go faster and faster, you'll start to get a dynamic in there, a wobble, and the whatever you're working with will flutter. It didn't do that. Now, people, there's been a huge argument about what happened to this airplane from a standpoint of satellites have taken it over. We, of course, have the Aurora floating out there. We have now the SR-72 that Lockheed is kind of kicking around. We have the Black Manta. Nobody knows for sure what's flying out there, but I would say that there will be a successor to this aircraft, probably with a scramjet around the SR-72 design, and that will replace it. Now, that is where we stop with this airplane. Now, if you've got comments on this one, this is one, as I said, there are a lot of people that are very well versed in this airplane. If you want to add to the conversation, I want you to go ahead and do that. But before you do that, that was a big but there. You see how I stopped it cold, Kevin? You need to go out, and if you're going to watch this video again, watch it 5 times. Watch it the first time, click on the link, buy your Lockheed Martin Skunk Works shirt. Go ahead and pick up on the link. Jason will happily sneak down to the mailbox in all black so fast that no one can see him, and it mailed to you. In fact, it could be faster than Amazon same-day delivery. I cannot guarantee that, but before you put it down, Jason may have your shirt to you. As I said, may. There are no promises. Is that enough of a disclaimer there, Kevin? I think so. So go ahead and click on the link and get that shirt. We cannot do this. We are in the F1 home of our F-117, the Black Devil, aptly named, and we can't do all this stuff without your donation. So there is a link down there in the description. Send us a few bucks. We can certainly use it. For those of you that are homeschooling, we also have our educator links down there. You can download our various educator guides and use those at home. We are grateful. Now, if you came across us on YouTube and you like pretty much one take kind of stand up, get in there and get it done, aircraft videos, military aircraft videos, we're your guys and girls and everyone else. So join us and forward us to your friends who may like that kind of stuff. We appreciate it. Give us a comment. And then if you're on Facebook, the same thing. We love comments. Give us a like. We can certainly use those. Now, again, let's thank Nikki over at Melbourne Ska Orchestra as we're ready to fly on out of here with their music. Again, we appreciate that. Thank you, MSO, for giving us the what we call the workout music. Have a great day.
3, 2, 1, end of test. King with a go.
Rise to the blessed day, all my fears have gone away. I guess it's